Control your soul's desire for freedom. Hello and welcome to the China Podcast. It's been a rough week or two, maybe even longer if you're a Shanghai resident. Shanghai, as I'm sure you're all fully aware, is under complete lockdown at the moment. All 25 to 26 million of its citizens. That's a population a little bit bigger than Australia or the equivalent size of Venezuela.
Yeah, it's a staggering amount of people when you put it like that.
Yeah, it sure is. And Shanghai is arguably the most internationally recognised city in China. It's a massive trading and financial hub. From an economic point of view, it can't really afford to be closed for too much longer. Now, the human element in all this is that the zero COVID policy has been enforced absolutely on the city in order to curb infection and save lives.
Yeah, and that's a positive thing, but there are, the cracks are emerging.
Yes, they are. Local authorities have admitted mistakes in their lockdown strategy. And there's growing public discontent and anger in Shanghai.
Absolutely.
People they're fed up with being confined to their apartments or isolation facilities, as well as being COVID tested almost every day. It's a surreal situation, especially coming 2 years on from the original outbreak and the scenes that we witnessed in Wuhan, amongst other places.
Yeah.
The people in Shanghai, they're now reliving this exact scenario, at the same time as the rest of the world, or most of the rest of the world has moved on.
Yeah.
And Shanghai it's a ghost town right now, and nobody knows when it's all going to end.
And that's the scary part. We're not pointing fingers here, by the way. We're assessing the situation as we see it, and some of the images and the videos circulating online, they're quite harrowing. They're quite disturbing in places. And we're also seeing some comic elements and memes and whatnot. But the overall consensus is that people are not happy. Not everyone is getting their adequate supply of food. Some people are even running out of food. And some of these people have other mouths to feed. They have young families, and a bag of free vegetables, even if it is a good gesture, a mighty gesture, it's not going to last a household of, let's say, 4 people for that long. I have a friend in Shanghai, and in the first week that he was locked down, he was given a bag of vegetables, which was great for him.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Great for him. He had a house stocked up with ginger and garlic, so he was able to survive for the first week on a couple of vegan soups. But the second week came along and they gave him a bag of meat. He's a vegetarian.
No good to him.
No good to him.
No good to him at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
He could barter.
Yeah, could barter. Yeah.
Because that's what a lot of people are doing. It's great to see this this community spirit displayed. You see it in action. It's a wonderful Chinese way of doing things, and we see it here often.
Yeah.
Like bags of vegetables and meat, they're being organised by community leaders. And as I said, you have some people, they're even bartering with one another, like swapping half a dozen eggs for a few cucumbers, right?
Yeah.
But the grim reality is that not everybody is getting their share of food. And I guess that's just down to some communities being managed better than others, as well as the city not having the required number of delivery foot soldiers to see to the well-being of the 25 million, 26 million hungry bellies. Others, they're experiencing issues buying food on delivery apps, something you think might be straightforward.
Yeah.
But not being able to buy anything, that's just troubling.
Yeah.
That's just troubling. And they have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And everyone else is up at the same time.
Yeah.
And the system just crashes.
It just shuts down every day, yeah.
The shops run out of stock.
Yeah.
And they might have a basket of 20 or 30 goods, and that dwindles down to 3 by the time they hit checkout. So it's a desperate situation for many.
It is, yeah. And so, what does the lockdown look like in Shanghai? It's very similar to other cities in China. So Chinese apartments and building complexes, they're generally walled off or gated communities, and what the government does is just locks the front doors and the gates and the driveways, and they just shut it off.
Yeah, like nobody's allowed in or out, right?
Yeah, nobody that's not part of the community. Now this is where the lockdown is a little different, at least for the people I know there and what they've told me.
Yeah,
because when we experienced the lockdown here in Chongqing, which is on the border of, I was up in Guangzhou on the border of Wuhan, and we were locked in our communities, and we were given a ticket that we could go out one person from each family could go out once every 3 days to go to the supermarket. They're not allowed out.
No, they've got to rely on somebody else.
Exactly.
So it's it's completely out of their hands, and when things aren't going for them,
yeah,
they're going to get worried naturally.
They're naturally going to get worried. Yeah. Now the deliveries they've been given deliveries, and there's been some better it's been better in some places than others. Now, but the reason for the lockdown at the minute is the number of cases. People listening in the West, they probably won't think anything of this considering the size of the country. But there were 20,000 cases in Shanghai yesterday, according to some of the figures. And that's way more than even the peak of the COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Definitely. Well, I mean, like China has had a bit of an easy ride for the most part.
Yeah. Except
at the very beginning for 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And like that's due to the no COVID policy.
Yeah.
Simply put, and we were back to normality, or we were approaching normality by March, April 2020.
Yeah. We were getting there. But the Omicron is here now, and it is very contagious.
Yeah, like there were a number of cities locked down towards the end of March. Jilin and Shanghai being the epicenters for this outbreak. So, of course, they locked that city down too.
Yeah, right. And they tried to be a bit clever with the Shanghai lockdown.
Uh-huh.
They attempted to lock down the city in two parts. First, the east and then the west. I might have that backwards, but they locked down one side and then they locked down the other side.
Yeah.
But as we sit here right now, the entirety of Shanghai is still locked down.
Yeah, and it's important to note that originally they were going to lock down that first half of the city for 4 days, 4.5 days, something like that.
Yeah.
And then the other half, and open it up,
and
lock down the other half for 4.5 days.
Yeah.
But that has expired now, right?
That's expired.
And the first half, at least, is still under lockdown after 4 or 5 days.
Everyone's locked down. So the plan to stagger the lockdown was announced on the 27th of March. But that plan was abandoned 4 days later. They didn't just switch as they were going to.
Yeah.
They just abandoned the plan on the 31st of March.
Well, with numbers like that, it was always going to happen. And I'm pretty sure that there's more than a few people who woke up on April the 1st to what they thought was an elaborate joke. Yeah, being April Fool's Day and all that.
Yeah.
And that would have been some April Fool's joke, all right.
Wouldn't it?
But yeah, the siren, like a blaring out at noon. April Fool's Day. you can go out now.
Yeah. You're free to roam.
Yeah. But a bit of a cruel joke.
A cruel joke.
Very much so.
It'd be funny though. It would be funny. But yeah, they have like 30,000 medics in Shanghai doing testing, which is a lot of medics to do the testing.
Definitely, yeah, that is a lot of medics and a lot of volunteers too. Right?
Yeah, it is. There are a lot of volunteers,
and they've also brought in more responders from outside of Shanghai.
They have a whole
People actually experiencing in having worked in Wuhan at the time.
Yeah, and they have a whole
Having been like on the,
they have a
the
whole
ground when that happened.
testing team that kind of goes around the country. But yeah, so there's did you hear the one 2 days ago? I think it was Tuesday. Yeah, it was Tuesday. There was two guys from Shanghai who avoided the lockdown,
All right.
and they said to themselves, "Oh, well, feck this, they're going to lock us up. We'll get out of the city."
Okay.
And they went to Hangzhou, which is another massive city, and they went into a department store, they went into a department store, and their health code pinged
Yeah.
that they were
As they would.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the entire shopping centre, they just locked all the doors and waited for the testers to come. But there was 2,000 people locked inside of a supermarket.
And that's happened before, right?
Yeah, that's happened a couple of times, yeah.
That happened in Guangzhou
Yeah.
back when that was locked down not too long ago.
Not too long ago, yeah.
I remember
Not
seeing
too
pictures
long
of
ago.
it. Everyone just crowded in like the
Yeah. And
ground floor of the
and
shopping
the
centre.
thing about the Omicron, it's so contagious that, and we have every variant of Omicron here. We have all three variants have been recorded in Shanghai.
And so, what is the severity of this outbreak? What will it mean for China and zero COVID policy? Because what we're seeing is possibly the beginnings of a turning point.
Yeah, it looks like it. It really does.
But that remains to be seen, and that is just pure speculation at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, the government had said they are looking to reassess the zero COVID policy and that it will not be the strategy forever. But they are waiting for the severity of the virus to dissipate somewhat. There's a lot of people in this country, and it would have been a massive strain on the health workers if they just abandoned the zero COVID policy outright. So for now, they're just going to continue the policy, see how it goes. And there are 77,000 beds in Shanghai alone for COVID patients. And that's simply not enough if COVID gets out into the public domain. And what's the vaccination rate?
It's quite high.
COVID in China.
It's quite high. It's 88% of people are fully vaccinated. The government has said that the outlook for Shanghai, though, is, and this is their words, pretty grim. But with a bit of luck, they'll keep everyone fed and calm.
Yeah. Things can only get better.
Yeah, they can only get better.
But it's going to take a bit of time.
Yeah.
Now, what we wanted to talk about this week was something, in the words of Monty Python, completely different.
And now for something completely different.
Yeah. Speaking of Monty Python, they liked to talk about kind of old stuff, old classical, ancient stuff. Yeah.
Incontinentia buttocks. Yeah, no, they had a few.
They did a few sketches on the Romans.
They did.
Which is where we're going to lead.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about the Romans in China.
Yeah. It's an interesting old story,
Did the Romans ever come to China? There is a theory that exists or has existed for quite 70 years. Yeah. I think 70 years. And we're going to get into it right now. So we're going back 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Right? More than 2,000 years. We're going back to what biblical writings would call before Christ BC.
Yeah.
Right? So at the time, we had the Roman Empire.
Yep.
And we had the Han Empire in China. Okay? So keep that in mind. But how much did the Roman and Han empires know about each other? In truth, their knowledge was fairly sparse. So let's keep this in mind. China was called Serica in Rome, right? And the Chinese known as the Sirens. The word derived from the Latin for silk, siricum. But Serica didn't strictly refer to China in as much as it did to everything east of India. The Romans couldn't do much more than generalize. So a lot like today, there were sure to have been plenty of misconceptions about China and much of East Asia as well, for that matter.
Yeah, and to a large extent, nothing is changed, has it? Despite the technology that we now have, there is still a good deal of ignorance.
Yeah, given the social media lens that we now have, that wealth of instant information right there in your face, 24/7. Like, we still have much to learn about each other.
Yeah.
And really, all the Romans knew about China had to do with silk, their knowledge of silk. And there's little to indicate that they knew anything about Chinese culture or people.
Yeah, and the Romans imported silk. They imported silk from China, but there was very little happening on the other end. The Romans dealt heavily in the export of bulky goods like wine and wheat and iron ore, and unlike silk, these foods and materials, they're not going to last the distance.
Yeah, although evidence of some Roman goods has been found in China, right?
Yeah. There's been several finds, especially in tombs, most notably in Xi'an, where some Roman coins were discovered. Roman coins also sprung up in Japan. The thinking there is that they found their way to Japan via China. Now, Han records show that a Roman delegation arrived in China in the imperial city of Luoyang in 166 AD, having been sent by the Emperor Andon, which is believed to have been the Emperor Antonius Pius, or perhaps his adopted son. His adopted son being much more famous, actually.
Yeah.
The Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Yet, there are no Roman records to confirm the same, and they liked writing things down. Similarly, in exchange, there isn't anything to suggest that a delegation from China ever set foot in Rome. A Han envoy did actually leave China in the year 97 with the intentions of exploring the West. It was a lone mission. It was undertaken by a guy called Gan Ying. However, when he reached Parthia, or what we know as Persia, which is in Iran, he was convinced not to travel any further due to the danger and the 2 years that it would take to reach Rome.
Yeah, I think the Parthians probably sensed the trading opportunity of their own, if they kept Mr. Ying around.
Sure, don't you know it? Any knowledge the Chinese had of Rome at the time probably came from second-hand information gathered by Gan Ying on his journey.
So I think it's fair to say that both empires were well aware of each other, but what they knew simply had a lot to do with word of mouth.
Yeah, that was it. And the Romans wanted Chinese silk. Great summer clothes,
Of course. Yeah, of course, for those hot Roman summers.
Exactly, yeah.
And even then, China was a manufacturing powerhouse,
Yeah.
Everyone wanted their goods.
Yeah, hence the Silk Road, which starts in Xi'an, by the way. You lived in that part of the world on the Silk Road for a while. Did you ever hear a place called Liqian?
Yes, I did live there. Yeah, in 5 years in Gansu.
Yeah.
Liqian, I didn't hear about it at the time.
Yeah.
But I have become aware of it since.
Yeah.
And Liqian is significant for its proposed ties to the Romans, which is what we want to talk about right now. Now, bear in mind that Liqian is the former name of a small rural outpost in Gansu, which is now called Zhejiai. And it's relatively famous thanks to a theory formulated in the 1940s by a Chinese history professor called Homer H. Dubs, author of A Roman City in China, who attributed Roman links to the town's origin. Now we must first start with 3 Roman elites. Marcus Licinius Crassus, being the richest man in Rome at the time of this tale, Gaius Julius Caesar, and Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus.
Oh, what names. Magnificent names. Incredible names.
Yeah, don't they just roll off the tongue, eh?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
Yeah, right. So these 3 men decided to start a war.
Oh, lovely.
Around 58 BC. A war unauthorized by the Senate. So they were acting alone. Cowboys.
Crassus did that a lot, by the way.
So the war was perhaps one of self-interest. The enemy were the Parthians, sworn enemies of Rome, who we've already mentioned, and they were really enjoying the fruits of trading along the Silk Road, something Mr. Crassus wasn't too happy about.
Which reeks of greed.
Yeah, what else would it be? So Crassus assembled an army of 50,000 men in the belief that he'd crush the Parthians. This, by the way, is the same Crassus who had crushed Spartacus's rebellion in 71 BC. However, Crassus was extremely naive. His military leadership always questioned, and he underestimated the Parthians' military skill and resources. The resulting battle, the Battle of Carrhae in modern Turkey, witnessed a massacre and a humiliation for Rome. 20,000 Roman soldiers were slaughtered, including Crassus and his son. Some 15 to 20,000 managed to escape, while 10,000 more were captured. And it's these 10,000 men who would become known in the history books as the Lost Legion.
Yeah, because you see, the ultimate destiny of the prisoners of war remains a mystery. And it is with intrigue that some believe that their story concluded in the sands of northwestern China. Now, after being captured, the widely held view is that the 10,000 men became a mercenary army and either offered their services or were sent out to protect the eastern border of the Parthian Empire, which is now modern-day Turkmenistan, protecting it against invasions.
And it was there that they were captured again, yeah?
Yeah, killed or captured. This time by the Xiongnu. The Xiongnu, they'll keep popping up again in Chinese history if you care. The Xiongnu were in dispute with the Parthians over territory and region. The Xiongnu were a powerful confederation of nomadic tribes, collectively known as the Huns.
Yeah, the Huns.
Of Hungary fame. And their sphere of influence, it's stretched across Mongolia, Manchuria, southern Siberia, and parts of what are today the Chinese provinces of Xinjiang and Gansu, and eventually all the way into Rome itself. And those Romans who were captured were then enlisted into the ranks of the Hun army. And it's here that Dubs's theory takes off.
Yeah, because he maintains that the Lost Legion reappeared 20 years later, around the year 36 BC, at the Battle of Jiji, which is in modern-day Uzbekistan, a battle between the Chinese and the Xiongnu in modern-day Gansu. Chinese records speak of strange soldiers, veterans who fought perfectly and organised themselves into a fish-scale formation, which Dubs believes is a reference to the testudo, or tortoise, battle formation, typical of Roman legions. The testudo was a military tactic of tightly squared units utilising shields for defence. It was highly effective, but didn't prevail on this occasion. Dubs asserts that the legionnaires were once again captured following the loss to the Chinese, and 145 of them relocated to a place in the desert where they decided to establish the town of Liqian. Liqian may have been used as a vital, if isolated, defensive outpost along the northern frontier to help protect the Chinese against Tibetan raids.
Yeah, so let's talk now about Liqian, or before we get on to looking at the evidence for and against the theory, the romanticism of Li Qian is as the final post for a lost band of Roman soldiers. So let's clear one thing up first though. Li Qian doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Zhilai, which was visited in the 1980s by an Australian writer called David Harris. And he became enthralled by the story of the Lost Legion and the Lost Legion's proposed association with Li Qian in China. So much so that he moved to Gansu. He became an English instructor at the Lanzhou University.
Yes, I know it. I know some expat teachers who work there too.
Yeah. Now, Harris, he believed that the story had its roots in a good source. And he pursued his passion whenever he wasn't in the classroom. And soon he teamed up with Guan Yitren. Now, Guan Yitren, he's a Chinese history professor, also interested in Li Qian. And both men were adamant of the presence of Roman soldiers in the lands controlled by the Huns.
Yeah, the pair had to first figure out where Li Qian was. And from their estimations, they figured that it must be somewhere in the area around Zhilai, about a 5-hour drive northwest of Lanzhou, Gansu's provincial capital. In 1989, they drove out there, stumbling upon ancient walls and other remnants that had been constructed with rough stones consistent with Han Dynasty building. Evidence that a city existed around the time Li Qian was recorded in the land register, something of which we'll get onto a little bit later.
Okay, so let's return now to the man who came up with the theory, who is Homer Dubs. Now, his theory is based largely on the physical characteristics of the inhabitants of this small town. Without doubt, the most compelling evidence that exists. We're talking here about people with blonde hair, curly brown hair, blue eyes, green eyes, and pointy noses, all being Caucasian characteristics and not classic Chinese. The belief is that the remaining Roman legionnaires intermarried with the locals and then finally died out. Many of those living in Zhilai today are said to be Roman descendants. Now, Chinese archaeologists tried to back up Dubs' theory after finding around 100 skeletons, many of which had heights greater than 1.80 meter, about 6 foot tall, dating to over 2,000 years ago. But more recent genetic studies has seemed to rule out this Roman hypothesis. It's also not unusual that Caucasian physical characteristics appear in the population of the region. As the Silk Road, it saw frequent interracial marriages, even long before the Roman and Han empires, as indicated by the Taran mummies. Other arguments against the theory highlight 2005 DNA analysis of residents, which showed that they were closer in genetics to the Uyghurs of Xinjiang than the Southern Europeans. Similarly, in 2007, a study investigated the paternal lineage DNA, concluding that the people of Zhilai are not descendants of Romans, but are similar genetically to Han Chinese with a hint of Mongolian, even if many of the locals in the town have really bought into the idea that they originate from the lost Roman legion.
So, what about Li Qian, the place name? Dubs believed that the name Li Qian could be the transliteration in Chinese of Legio, meaning, you guessed it, legion. What's more, Li Qian was precisely the name that the Chinese used in this era to designate the unknown Romans who bought many of their luxury products, such as silk, which we've mentioned. Two other significant pieces of evidence show that Li Qian appeared in a government land register of about 5 AD. And only two other Chinese cities in the official rolls, Kucha and Wenxiu, bore the names of foreign establishments due to the immigrants who lived there. And according to Fan Ye's 5th century Ho Hen Shu, Liqian was what the Chinese called the Roman Empire.
Yeah. And archaeological digs in Zhejiang, they've also unearthed some interesting finds. One particular excavation there uncovered, it was a trunk with stakes which only Romans commonly used to build fortifications, as well as tree trunk-lined streets, which is also a common Roman practice. And additionally, Roman coins and some pottery was discovered. But best of all was a Roman-style helmet inscribed with the Chinese characters Jiao An, meaning one of the surrendered.
Interesting. So, where does the mystery stand today? In 1989, an Australian team of scientists applied to the Chinese government for permission to take aerial photographs and satellite images to determine if any ruins lay beneath the village. But they were denied due to political events in the country that same year. Since then, interest has cooled on both fronts, foreign and Chinese. Guan Yichuan, who travelled and worked alongside David Harris on the theory, died in 1998. His son, Guan Hang, has so far failed to publish a book full of his father's work, much to his dismay. As for Harris, he admitted, of course, to only having circumstantial evidence being available, but he remains determined to prove the mystery and inspire further research. Yet, he concedes that a comprehensive argument, much like Rome, cannot be built in a day.
Very good, very good. Yeah, and there are some too who point out that supporters of the theory have more evidence than the critics. So there is plenty to work on, should they ever get it going again. While the last mention of Lichuan came in 746 AD, when the city was overrun by the Tibetans, the town of Zhejiang has been doing its bit to keep the legend afloat in the form of tourism. The mystery surrounding the areas has created economic development, and local officials say they would welcome a full-scale archaeological excavation of the area and have promoted the legend of the Lost Legion by erecting a Roman pavilion and statues of Roman men and women in the town.
Unfortunately, though, you won't be taking any trips to Gansu very soon.
This is
because it's pretty much closed down.
Pretty much closed down.
Lanzhou is not as a lockdown of the same severity as Shanghai, but a lot of places are closed. Schools are closed, that kind of thing.
But I'll tell you, that is one hell of a conspiracy theory.
It is,
isn't it?
Yeah.
And why aren't all conspiracy theories like that? Like there were Romans in China. Like somebody, there's obviously some sort of thread of truth to it. You know what I mean?
It has the makings of a great film,
doesn't it? You know, the Romans in China. Like you'd get Miramax to make that, you'd make billions.
Yeah. But as I was saying, like, you know, you can't go to Gansu. Gansu is off limits right now. But some other places are opened. Yeah. Some places close to us.
Yeah.
And in our last podcast, we were talking about Gaelic games.
Yeah.
In China, we were telling you about how the Gaelic was coming to us here in Chongqing, and it happened.
Yeah, it did.
And it happened. Those guys from Chengdu, they arrived. They arrived on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And we had a couple of games of Gaelic and tag rugby as well.
Yeah. That was a good crack.
It was fantastic.
Yeah. And it was great to see the locals getting in on it as well.
Great to see the locals. People of all nationalities there. The majority, I would say, new to the game.
Yeah.
Brand new to the game, and they enjoyed it. They took to it.
Yeah. Benedict, one of the lads there that plays soccer with us, he actually played in Chengdu with Mark Dolan, the guy who organised the whole thing. He couldn't make it to the game, but it was great to see a little bit of Irish culture dropped into the middle of a rainy day, a rainy Saturday afternoon.
Such a huge city.
In such a huge city, yeah. And there was a good chunk of people there. There was a good chunk of people there, considering how bad that day was.
Yeah. It was a nice soft day, as we'd say in Ireland.
Which means it was raining.
Yes, raining heavily. But we had a nice little AstroTurf pitch.
Yeah.
It wasn't muddy.
It wasn't.
I was looking outside, thinking, slashing rain. It's going to be mucky. It's
yeah.
going to be mucky. I'm going to be cleaning my boots all night. After this.
Yeah, I had an idea that we'd be playing on muck. I was kind of looking forward to it, you know. But we played goals only. We didn't kick the points. And the teams were mixed, so it wasn't really Chongqing versus Chengdu.
No. They didn't have. Did they have enough?
They couldn't get enough to field the full team, but like we made up the numbers, you know.
Yeah.
Well, like,
we had a good turnout from Chongqing, and I didn't know if we would or not.
Oh, we would have had way more than that if the sun was out.
Yeah. But word got around, and everyone did their bit. Everyone had promoted it. Yeah. So, thanks to you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to whoever said anything.
You created a fantastic day out for everyone, and nice atmosphere.
And an argument over whether I got a hat trick or whether Eric got a hat trick.
Whether I got a hat trick, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm giving it to you.
Yeah, and I'm giving it to you because I just want to know that you scored a hat trick with your bum.
It brushed off me. You struck it, but it brushed off me on the way to goal. It was probably going in anyway. No, I think it was. Well, either ways, it was going somewhere. Which we are also doing on Saturday. Yeah, a couple of months ago. It's about a couple of months ago.
It is a couple of months ago.
It might even be January when we last mentioned this.
Yeah.
We were promoting the Chongqing Cyberwalk. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And I can't remember for the life of me if we told you it wasn't going to happen. But it was postponed. And it's been rescheduled. It's going to be on this Saturday. Saturday, April 9th, 7 o'clock till late. Now, the guys at the Gulashan pet shelter, they've had recently their rent has been increased
massively.
Substantially by 20,000 yuan.
Yeah.
In euros and dollars, that's about 2,500 quid.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So they're trying to raise a bit of money, and which is probably rushed. The bringing the Cyberwalk back. If you are interested, if you're in Chongqing, please sign up by tomorrow, 5 p.m. That's the deadline. It's 200 RMB per person. That includes your Cyberwalk registration, some accessories, handmade accessories, a couple of drinks afterwards in the Dungeon Bar.
Cool bar.
Yeah, very cool bar, which will include a DJ set by Mr. Bad Monkey.
Cool DJ.
You'll get a finisher's medal.
Cool medal.
Very cool medal, very nice medal. Everyone loves a medal.
Everyone loves a medal.
Everyone loves getting the medal. Photography, digital photography files from the day. Yeah,
you'll get sent the photos from the day. And there's a prize as well. There's a prize as well for the most cyberpunky dressed person.
Prize for the most cyberpunky dressed person, as you can say. And a prize for the team who finishes with the most points. Yeah. So they're doing they're going from point to point. They're trying to find a way around the city, and it's a bit of a game in a way. If you're going, you're going to meet up at a starting point, but you must register to the WeChat group. Their WeChat group. If you're listening and you're in Chongqing and you're part of our China podcast group, I'm going to drop in that new poster, the updated poster, right after we record. Yeah, and you'll see it there.
You'll see it momentarily.
So if you're going tomorrow, Saturday. Sorry, it's Thursday as we're recording now, but I'm forgetting myself. If you go Saturday,
Yeah.
have some fun.
And
Have some fun. Have a good time.
I might be able to do it myself because of a new policy with getting the train. So I won't be able to get a COVID test in time.
Which means you can't.
Which
get
means
the
I
train.
can't get the train. So I'll probably do the walk instead.
Do it. Yeah.
Bit of a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good for you. You'll get
Exactly.
fit.
It'll keep
Stretch
me
the
healthy.
legs. Stretch the legs in the
yeah.
evening. Yeah. So good luck with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're going to call it a day. Wrap it up there. Yeah. Do the usual. Subscribe and follow us. We've got 102 followers on Twitter now.
Oh,
We're delighted with that.
I haven't even followed us on Twitter.
You're not on Twitter. That's the problem.
This is true. Yeah. I might join Twitter just to make it 103.
Just to make it 103. But we're growing. We're growing slowly but surely. Slowly but surely. We're about 60 a month ago.
Yeah.
Twitter's a hard place to kind of grow.
Once you
your
get
support.
once you get traction, you get traction. But sure, we'll get there eventually.
That is true.
Anyway.
So yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll chat to you next week, hopefully.
Toodles.